Okay, now it's on. Is it coming through loud and clear? Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
This is usually more full. This is more full today than it usually is. Is there anything special going on? No, as far as work on another room that's being done and you can't be there, and so you had to come here. So, no, I'm excited to see you all here. So, I don't know how much time we have left. I know it's not a lot, and I really want to get done with this. I really want to get done with this topic so we can get to the next one. However, I don't want to shortchange us on this, and you probably might be thinking what I was thinking earlier, and I said, am I beating a dead horse? And I hope that I'm not, because this is our third class, right, on the longest chapter in the book, Behold the Pit by Eric Parker. And he's dealing with addiction, and he dealt with, and we talked about that, substance addiction, and then he talked about process addiction. Those are the main two types of addictions that we've been studying so far. And so we talked about process addiction, and we covered the idea of pornography, and we talked about the numbers of all that and how it plagues so many Christian lives, but I mean the world in general as well. And then we made a shift to gambling, and I started thinking about this, and I realized what state I'm in. And then I started thinking, okay, maybe they're looking at me like a deer caught in headlights, because maybe gambling is not that big in Tennessee like it is in Texas. Gambling is huge in Texas. I mean, the lottery is huge in Texas. I mean, and so like, it's just, there's a mindset. And so am I okay to say that? Or no, you can say, no, gambling is huge here too in Tennessee, and we'll be fine. Yeah. It's huge everywhere now. But oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Basically gambling for items in the game.
Right.
You're paying money for it to try to get something with no guarantee of getting it.
Right. Yeah. And it consumes you. I mean, you think about the sports world today, right? And you have like these prize picks, and you have all these parlays that they show every commercial that, you know, when they cut from the game, and they're trying to, whether it's beer, food, or parlays, right? And that's all you see on TV when you're watching football games sometimes. And so gambling has been more paraded, if you will, over the last decade or so. But I think the tolerance of it has gone so high that we don't view it as anything other than entertainment. And I think that may be the problem here. So anyway, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about gambling and finish this. Hopefully we can be done with this and to get on to the next topic. So I want to start with, I'm sure pretty much everybody in this room has a copy of this or knows this book, Piloting the Straight by Dave Miller. And he has a section in there on pages 352 to 354 where he talks about gambling. And I want to read you some of the things that he's written in these 3 pages. So he says, as the moral fiber of American civilization deteriorates and the biblical values are jettisoned activities and biblical values are jettisoned activities that once were perceived to be harmful to society are now becoming acceptable. Those within churches of Christ who have relaxed their doctrinal viewpoints on other matters, are finding it difficult to see anything wrong with playing the lottery or engaging in other forms of gambling. And he goes on to say, researchers say that at least 8 million Americans are compulsive gamblers, with 1 million of these being teenagers. Now, this was written, I think, 20 years ago. Now, watch this. He says the suicide rate among active gamblers, especially women, is highest of all illnesses. We don't think about that. But then he goes on to say this. Compulsive gambling is being compared by the experts to alcohol and drug addiction. But then again, we have to ask ourselves, well, what is gambling? What is gambling? Well, here's a simple definition. Gambling is the act of risking money or possessions on an uncertain event motivated by the hope of gain. This is what Logan was just saying, right? I'm going to take that risk on this game, hoping that I get something far greater in return. Now, I'll give up $20, $30, maybe $50. I know guys that have, I've talked to a cousin who does I don't think he does it anymore, but he did. And he was like, I had to cut the game off because I was spending hundreds of dollars a week on a video game. A video game. And so when you think about this, it is the act of risking money. So let's open our Bibles for just a moment. And let's go back to 1 Timothy 6, verses 9 and 10. First Timothy 6, 9 and 10. I'm going to read it from the New American Standard because that's what I have in my notes. Paul writes, but they that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish, now notice this, and hurtful lust, which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money is the root of all evil. I think actually that's the New King James Version, not the New American Standard. And so here's what we have to understand about gambling. It's not a neutral issue. It is a moral issue. And more importantly, it is a spiritual issue. And I know this is a class on psychosocial issues. So it's an issue that we have to address. And so that is a simple definition of gambling. But there's also three things that ultimately come into play when you think about this. There's an artificial risk of losing what one owns. There's the expectation of gain from another's loss. And we don't stop to think about that, but we'll get into that in just a little bit. And there's the certainty that someone must lose for another to win. And so when we think about that, what law comes to mind, or what rule comes to mind when you think about that last one? Somebody's going to win, but there's always going to be a what? A loser. And when you think about this, what does Jesus say in Matthew 7 and verse 12? It's what we call, it starts with gold and ends with rule. Do unto others as you'll have. It's the golden rule. And this idea here is in complete contradiction or opposition to the golden rule. I mean, think about it. If it was flip side, right? If it was turned on its ugly head, right? And let's say somebody who wins in gambling, or they won a good lump sum, and then next thing you know, how would they feel if that was all taken from them? Well, they would hate it. They would feel bad. And so, I mean, that's just what comes with it. Now, there are many forms, as Logan already mentioned. We have lotteries, we have sports bettings, we have casino games, we have slot machines, raffles, dice, casual card games. I mean, you name it. I mean, if you can wage money on it, somebody is thinking about that already. Why are we consumed with the idea of getting more money in a cheap way? Greed and covetousness, and we'll talk about that. Okay, so this is what I just gave you there. Sorry, I'm supposed to go to the next slide. But this is the whole key here. This is what we want to do. What does the Bible say on this topic? That's what we want to focus on for the rest of this class. So what does the Bible say on this topic? Okay, so I'm going to give you 6 biblical principles that condemn gambling. And you can write these down. If I go too fast, I can give you a copy of my notes if you would like it. But I want to give you 6 biblical principles that condemn gambling. This is what the Bible says on it. Number 1, it is unauthorized by God's word. It is unauthorized by God's word. Let's go to Matthew chapter 10 and verse 10. And Chris, do you mind getting Ephesians? I'll go to Matthew 10:10, and Chris, you might get in Ephesians 4:28. I'm going to call on some of you tonight. Is that okay? So I'm not the only one doing all the talking. Oh, Chris Wayman, I'm sorry. So you want to do Matthew 10:10, and Chris can get Ephesians 4:20. Chris Wayman. Sorry. Matthew 10:10.
No bag for your journey, or 2 tunics, or sandals, or a staff, for the laborer deserves his food.
For the laborer deserves his food. Okay, Ephesians 4:28.
Let him who stole steal no longer, but rather let him labor, working with his hands what is good, that he may have something to give him who has need.
The reason why I took us to these scriptures is because Scripture gives us three approved ways rather, how one is to get gain or transfer wealth. What's number one? What's number one that we just read? Work, right? Labor. That's how we are. So when you exchange, I remember when I was young and I thought I was onto something. I was maybe 21. And I started researching like the Constitution and certain amendments. And I was like, yeah, I don't think we should be taxed for our wages. Right. And so I came up with this elaborate scheme to put this proposal together while I was at work. Yeah. Right. I'm supposed to be working instead of putting a proposal together. And I was doing construction. And I was like, I can prove my case that there's an equal trade, right? I go and I give labor, and what does the company that hired me for labor, what do they give me in return? Money. And it's straight up, fair trade. There should be no taxes on that. And so this is what I was coming up in my head, and they were like, just give it up, man. Get to work, you know? So I was like, you're spending way too much time on this. Just give it up and go to work. And I'm like, all right, I'll make my money the honest way, right? Okay, number 2. Let's go to Luke. Do you mind getting Acts 4, verses 34 and 35? And can I have a volunteer for James 4:13? Acts 4, 34 and 35, and then James 4:13.
There was not a needy person among them, for all who are on this land and houses did sell them, and when the proceeds of the sale, and let them across the street, and let them be distributed to each as any had need.
Thank you. James 4:13.
Somehow, you can say they, or tomorrow, we will go to such a city, spend a year there buying and selling to make a profit.
So what is that? What are these verses describing? How about a lawful trade? An exchange, right? An exchange. So those are 2 approved ways we can work for. There's a lawful trade you can exchange, but then there's another one. And let's go to 2 more passages. Luke 6, verses 30 and following. If anybody, I'll read those. I'll read Luke 6, verses 30 through 35. And if I can have someone get Acts 20, verse 35. Acts 20 and verse 35. I'm going to Luke 6. And I probably need to speed it up because we're not going to get done in time. Luke 6, verses 30 through 35. Jesus says, give to every man that asketh of thee, and of him that taketh away thy goods, ask them not again. And as ye would that men should do to you, do ye also to them likewise. For if ye love them which love you, what thank have ye? For sinners also love those that love them. And if ye do good to them which do good to you, what thank have ye? For sinners also do even the same. And if ye lend to them of whom you hope to receive, what thank have ye? For sinners also lend to sinners, and to receive as much gain, or much again. But love your enemies, and do good, and lend, hoping. Now notice this: for nothing again, and your reward shall be great, and you shall be children of the highest. For he is kind unto the thankful, unto the unthankful, and to the evil. Now Acts chapter 20 and verse 35.
I have shown you in every way, laboring like this, that you must support the weak, and remember the words of the Lord Jesus, that he said, it is more blessed to give than to receive.
So what's the third approved way? How about a free will giving? Gives, right? And so these are the ways that the Bible approves for us to get gain, whether by working, fair trade, lawful trade, or free will giving. And so when we think about this for just a moment, I got to speed it up. Gambling fits none of these, right? All those verses that we just read, where does gambling fit? It doesn't. If we stick to our definition, it doesn't fit. And so what gambling does, it creates wealth through what? Chance and loss, not work, trade, or love. So let's move on to the next one. And if you have a comment, if you want to say something, please feel free to interrupt. Trust me, I won't get upset. Number 2, It violates the law of love and the golden rule. And this is what I mentioned earlier. Let's go to, I already said Matthew 7:12. I'll speed it up a little bit. Jesus says, therefore, all things whatsoever you would that men should do to you, do ye even also to them. Now, when you think about this for just a moment, I'm not saying that you get in the mind of a gambler, but just try to get in the mind of a gambler. Just a second. A gambler wants to take another's money, but not lose his what? Not lose his own money. Where's the fairness in that? That is a clear violation of what Jesus says in Matthew 7:12. All right? Now, one man said this. He said, gambling is essentially theft by mutual consent. Do we agree with that? I think that's a fair conclusion to make. Gambling is essentially theft by mutual consent. It thrives on selfishness and disregard for one's neighbor. Well, when you think about that, why? Why is that the case? Because the gambler's not worried about everybody else. He's worried about what? Himself. And only himself. Now, I know some people try to dress it up, and like I mentioned last time, right? I was talking to some of my family members, and they would always say, I'm gonna play the lottery now, and if I hit the Mega Millions, I'll pay off my house and pay off my car, and then I'll give the rest of it to the poor. And I'm like, I don't even know if you believe what you're saying. How do you expect anybody else to believe that, So, number 3. Gambling rejects the work ethic that we are to have. Now, my mom always used to tell me this when I was young, and I grew up in a house. I have 6 sisters, but I didn't grow up in a house with 6 sisters. Okay, I grew up in a house with 4 sisters. And my mom was very, very strict and hard on me. And she used to always tell me, son, I'm hard on you because I'm raising you to be a man. My dad was always out of town working and doing construction, and he provided for his family. But she was always telling me, you're going to have to grow up, work, provide an honest living for your wife and children. Your sisters, they're going to go off and marry somebody, and then their husband has to take care of them, so we don't have to worry about them. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, try that in today's society, right? Yeah, it's not PC, right? And so, but I remember she used to always say something. And when she would give me a task to do, naturally, what do teens or young children do when you tell them to go cut the 2-acre lawn with a push mower? And it's in the Texas heat. You complain. And my mom used to always say this: a man that doesn't work doesn't eat. Well, she would say it Texas way: man don't work, don't eat. Man don't work, don't eat. All right? The Bible says that. Well, where did she get it from? The Bible says that, right? And so when you think about what gambling does, it rejects the work ethic that we are to have. When God created Adam, what did he give Adam to do? Netflix and chill? Right? No. To tend the garden. He gave him work. I was telling Jared was so gracious to allow me to go on a project with him to go look at the construction of one of his projects. And like I said, I did construction for 12 years, and I was in actually building skyscrapers and large power plants and stuff. And so I was up hundreds of feet in the air putting steel together. And so when I was out on this project, it was just, I can feel this rush come over me. And I'm like, man, look at this, look at that. And I'm over here critiquing the work. And I'm like, I don't know about that weld over there. And those bolts look a little. And so, but I told him after all that, I said, I appreciate it. I appreciate you for bringing me out here because it reminded me of the work that I used to do. And I like working with my hands. Men, do we like working with our hands? All right, do we feel accomplished when we work with our own hands and get something done? And it's like, I did that, right? Wives don't answer. Because I already know, I can anticipate what might come next. So when we think about this, gambling seeks profit without effort. And you talk to a lot of young people today, and they're always talking about this get rich quick scheme. As if that's the norm. And they look at rich people or wealthy people and they say, well, look, they're rich. And it's like, well, you didn't see all the hard nights. You didn't see all the labor, and you didn't see the struggle that they had to get to that point. And so you see the end result and automatically you want that, but you don't want to do the work that they did to accumulate that wealth the right way. It doesn't work that way. Okay, let's move on. I beat that horse long enough. Okay, what are we on? Number 4? Number 4. Gambling encourages covetousness and greed. That's what Chris was just talking about up here. Let's go to a couple passages. Let's go to Luke 12 and verse 15. What, if you have to say one thing, if you have to give it just one motivating or something that drives gambling, what do you think it is? What's the one thing that drives gambling? It's fun. Keeping up with the Joneses. Instant gratification. All those are right, by the way. But I'm talking about on a more spiritual, personal level. What in the mind, again, let's get into the mind of a gambler, right? What drives that person?
I'd say men look at it as a challenge.
It's a challenge? Well, we talked about this. Maybe the verse will give it. Maybe the verse will give it. It is a challenge for sure. Look at, what did I say? Luke 12:15. Jesus says, beware of what? Covetousness, for a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesses. When you think about this, the one thing that I came up with that drives the gambler more than anything is the lust to have more. It's a desire. It's a lust to have something that they don't have, or desire something that will never truly satisfy. But it doesn't extinguish the desire or the lust for it. Right. Think about that for just a moment. Somebody who gambles and let's say they hit, the jackpot on the slot machine. Do they say, oh, well, I did it one time and I'll never do this again? What usually happens? They're going to put it right back. Well, that feeling that they get from winning, right? That feeling that they get from winning, that's why the experts say it's no different from alcohol and drug addiction, because it's like that initial high. It is a high for them. And so once they get that big payday or whatever it is, it's something that gets them going. But sometimes the payday never comes. Paul says in Colossians 3:5 that ultimately covetousness, or gambling in this case, is idolatry. And we kind of mentioned this briefly, but the gambler's heart doesn't trust. Now, I'm speaking about Christians who have a problem with gambling, who view it as entertainment and really not probably harmful. As a Christian, where is your trust supposed to be? In God. Absolute trust or partial trust? Now, it's easy to say absolute trust until you have to absolutely show it. Right? Does that make sense? I can say I trust in God and he has my full trust no matter what, until my back is against the wall. Until the eviction note is hanging on the door. Until you're living by the candle because your lights got cut off. What pushes people to go to these extremes? Well, they have to trust in either in themselves or what the world has to provide for them or gives them. Moving on. Number 5. Gambling corrupts stewardship. And we talked about this a little bit, but James 1:17 tells us that everything we have belongs to who? God. We are just stewards of what God has given us. Yes or no? And I always say this, and I love making this point, especially with my children, that God has always given me, and when I talk about my children, God has given them to me. He's entrusted them to me. And I'm going to be responsible as a steward. God is going to judge me as either a faithful steward or unfaithful steward in so many aspects of life, but I always look at it with my children. God gave them to me perfectly. He demands them back the same way. Now, obviously, perfect doesn't mean sinlessness. We're not going to get into all that, but God is entrusting us with his. Whose creation is this? Adam, let's say you came over to my house. Our house, sorry. Our house. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to get in trouble, right? Karen, so let's say you came over to our house. And and you kicked off your shoes at the door. You went into the refrigerator, grabbed you something to eat, grabbed you something. I know you wouldn't ever do it. I know you. I'm just hypothetically. And we were watching a show, and then you come and grab the remote and change it, and you kick your feet up. How do you think we would? What did you say? It sounds about right. Oh. What kind of response do you think you would be met with? Not from me. I'm the nice one. No, I'm just playing. I'm just. It's the kids you have to worry about again. Yeah. So. Right. Well, who does he think he is? Whose house is this? Right. And so when we think about this, God has given us. He created this universe. He created this world. Everything that we have belongs to him. And we do well to remember that and keep that always in perspective, including our finances. And so you think about the gambler. If God blesses the unjust and the just and sends the rain on the righteous and the unrighteous, God is blessing them too. Maybe not in the same way, but he's blessing them with blessings, right? And they're going to be responsible for that too. So, number 6. Okay. Gambling damages Christian influence. Let's say we are commanded by Jesus in Matthew 5:16 to be the light of the world, right? Paul would tell us in 1 Corinthians 15 and verse 33 that evil communication corrupts good morals, right? Or good manners, right? And so if as a Christian, I'm struggling with gambling or any kind of addiction, what kind of influence do you think I'm going to have on my brother or someone in the world for that matter? Well, you're going to have an influence. You're going to have some kind, but it's going to be a negative one. It's going to be a bad influence, right? And so are you letting your light shine? Oh, what do they see? I always say it this way. I guess I'm just going down memory lane tonight. But I like to always present it this way. We are either doing two things with the world when they look at us. We're either giving the world a chance to glorify God by the way we live our lives. And what's the other side of that coin? We're giving the world a chance to do what? Blaspheme God. And you hear it, I got 5 minutes. And you hear it all the time. You hear people all the time, and you try to talk to young people, and they're like, hey, you try to invite them to church, and they're like, well, I have a relationship with God. I don't I don't have to go to church to go to heaven. And then they will say things like this. They'll say, well, church is full of hypocrites, right? They do the same thing that we do. And I mean, a lot of the times that's just an excuse so they don't have to come and feel the conviction. I get that. But is there some truth to that? Yeah, of course. Of course. And so we always have to be mindful, whether we like it or not, you signed up for it when you chose to be a disciple of Christ. And he's commanded us to go out and let our light shine. And so everything that you do, people are not us in general, sorry, but you too, yeah. Everything that we do, people are watching us closely. And it's going to be reflected by somebody. And so, that's enough of that. Okay. Scriptural evidence and illustrations. I'm going to run through these quickly just so we can be done with this class. So is there any cases in the Bible where people were gambling? Well, I can think of one right off the bat. All right. John chapter 19, verses 23 through 24. The Roman soldiers, what did they do for Jesus' garments? They cast lots. And the reason why they cast lots is because Jesus' garment, his outer coat, was expensive. And so they thought, okay, well, he's about to be put to death. We can't let this expensive garment go to waste, so who gets it? We can get paid. And so they cast lots for it. 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 3, Peter basically says a course, this is the Gentiles, with how they walk, a course of sensuality, lust, drunkenness, carousing, drinking parties, and this is where gambling would fit according to the Greek language, abominable idolatries. So, I'm going to skip all this so you can see what I had planned for us, but we're not going to get this. This is what I want to leave us with. Suppose one of your brothers or sister comes up to you and they tell you that they're struggling with addiction. Maybe it's gambling, maybe it's pornography, but we're going to keep it to gambling here. What would you do? And we always have to view ourselves this way. Are we a safe zone or are we a stay away zone? Can somebody who's struggling come to us and know that they can confide in us without fear of mistreatment? And can we help them with their problem? We should be able to, right? That's what we want. And so we have to be able to, as Christians, this is what Parker notes in his book. He says Christians should be the safest people to talk to about addiction. What's the last part? Not the most condemning. He's also going to write, and if you notice down here, he says, our task is not to shame the sinner, but to shine light into the dark. Accountability without compassion crushes. Compassion without accountability enables. The church must hold both. It must hold both. And so he's going to give us some practical applications or practical steps in his book for churches and individuals. Number one, acknowledge the problem. Don't pretend it's rare or only out there. Right? And what's out there? What does he mean by out there? The world. Right? The world. It's in the church too. He says, unite with God's promises. Romans 6:14 says, sin shall not be master over you. And we were going to talk about that, but time just wouldn't allow it. Number three, use wise resources. We talked about what we have here at East Ridge, right? There's counselors, recovery groups. There's accountability software. We talked about Covenant Eyes for those who struggle with, and Parker mentions that in his book, those who struggle with pornography. I mean, it is expensive, but I'm sure somebody would help out if you really needed it. But there's also spiritual disciplines that all can serve as tools for which God provides. And then finally, number four, support without enabling. Help those struggling by walking beside them, but do not shield them for the consequences of sin. I know we kind of went through that fast, and I know this is one of those things where it's like, man, but I really appreciate you going through this study with me, and I really appreciate your patience and grace with me. You are dismissed. That's our class on addiction. I appreciate it.